The Woman in the Window by Michael Rodriguez. A few years ago, something very weird happened with my best friend. I was 15 years old at the time. One night, I decided to sleep over at my friend's house. After binging scary movies, we were in the mood for some real-life excitement. Not far from my friend's place was this creepy demolition site, a whole block of dilapidated houses slated for destruction in just 2 days. The local government was tearing them down to build new homes. The entire area was fenced off with "Do Not Enter" signs plastered everywhere. Every house was boarded up, tight doors and windows sealed shut. It seemed impossible for anyone to get inside. We decided to take a walk around the old neighborhood and snap some photos. My friend knew a secret spot where we could sneak onto the property. As we explored, we realized just how securely everything was sealed up. Then we noticed one house with a window on the top floor that wasn't boarded up quite as well. We could actually see into the room a bit. We took a quick picture with my digital camera before heading home to check out our photos. Later that night, as we scrolled through the images, something made my blood run cold. In the photo of that window, we saw a woman. She had pale white skin and jet black hair, wearing a brown raincoat. Her face looked so sad it was haunting. But here's the thing. We definitely hadn't seen anyone up there when we took that picture, and those houses were supposed to be empty and sealed tight. A chill ran down my spine as I remembered the verse. "And among them are some who listen to you, but we have placed over their hearts coverings, lest they understand it, and in their ears deafness." It was like some unseen force was at work. We raced back to that house to double-check. After investigating closely, it was clear. Everything really was boarded up securely. There's no way anyone could have been inside, let alone posing in that window. To this day, I can't explain what we captured in that photo. Sometimes I still see that woman's sad face in my dreams, wondering who she was and why she appeared to us that night. There are some mysteries in this world that defy explanation, leaving us to ponder the line between the seen and unseen realms. The Obsession by David Chen. This story isn't mine, but rather belongs to my friend from Japan. I'll call him Rita to protect his privacy. It happened when Rita was only about 11 or 12 years old. Rita was a pretty attractive kid and had his fair share of admirers. But one girl took her crush to an extreme level. Let's call her Ayano. Ayano was much older than Rita, around 17. She lived down the street and was an acquaintance of Rita's family. Rita hadn't thought much about her until she started stalking him relentlessly day and night. She followed him everywhere, both in person and online. Rita first started getting creeped out when Ayano began messaging him over 20 times a day. It was innocent stuff at first, like, "Be safe," "Are you all right?" "Sleep well." A bit weird, but he tried to overlook it. Then the messages took a darker turn. Instead of general check-ins, they got disturbingly personal. Things like, "You should eat your lunch" if he skipped a meal, or "I think your sister is hungry" when his little sister was crying. How could she possibly know those details? Rita stopped using his phone and social media at that point, but Ayano's obsession was just beginning. Rita's mother worked long hours, so he was often looked after by babysitters. One day he had a new sitter. It was Ayano. Nothing seemed particularly strange as she cared for Rita and his siblings, but she did get uncomfortably close to his mother. Soon after, Ayano approached Rita at school with some shocking news. She said his mother would be out of the country for a week and had arranged for Rita to stay at Ayano's house. Rita was hesitant, but felt he couldn't go against his mother's wishes. Ayano insisted his mom had already left, so Rita reluctantly agreed to go home with her after school that day. When they arrived at Ayano's house, her parents weren't home. Rita's memory gets hazy here. He still struggles to recount the full horror of what happened next. Ayano forced Rita to play disturbing games with her. She insisted they pretend to be husband and wife. She'd blindfold him and leave him alone in silent rooms for hours. As the days passed, Rita grew more and more terrified. He felt trapped with no way to call for help. The words of the Quran echoed in his mind. And Allah would not let your faith go to waste. Indeed, Allah is to the people kind and merciful. He clung to hope that someone would rescue him. 5 days into his captivity, Ayano left for her part-time job. The doors were locked and the windows too high to escape from. Rita sat numbly in front of the TV when a chilling news report flashed on screen. It was a missing child alert for him. Before he could catch the number to call, the TV switched off. Ayano stood behind him, remote in hand. Rita broke down sobbing and screaming. He managed to wiggle from Ayano's grasp just long enough to open a window and cry for help. By some miracle, a couple walking by heard his pleas and called the police. Within an hour, police swarmed the house. They found Rita locked in Ayano's bedroom, blindfolded with his hands bound. Rita's memories of what happened next are fuzzy. He only recalls the police taking Ayano away as his mother hugged him tightly. The trauma of the ordeal was too much. Rita's family moved to Australia soon after. He hasn't seen his kidnapper since, but the mere sound of her name still makes him cower in fear. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal, leaving us to wrestle with the darkness that exists in this world. The Dancing Man by Sarah Williams. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major US city. I've always been a night owl, so I'd often find myself restless after my early bird roommate went to bed. To pass the time, I'd go on long walks, letting my mind wander. I spent 4 years walking alone at night, never once feeling afraid. I used to joke that even the drug dealers were polite in our neighborhood. But all that changed in just a few terrifying minutes one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. I was strolling near a police-patrolled park, quite far from my apartment. The night was eerily quiet, even for a weeknight. Hardly any cars on the road and almost no one on foot. The park, as usual, was completely deserted. I turned down a short side street to loop back home. That's when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box step with an exaggerated forward stride. He was dance-walking, headed straight for me. I assumed he was probably drunk, so I moved close to the curb to give him space to pass. But as he got closer, I realized how unnaturally graceful his movements were. He was incredibly tall and lanky, wearing an old-fashioned suit. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he moved. He danced closer and closer until I could make out his face. His eyes were wide, and wild head tilted back slightly, gazing up at the sky. His mouth was stretched into a painfully wide, cartoon-like grin. The combination of those manic eyes and that unnatural smile sent chills down my spine. I quickly crossed to the other side of the empty street to avoid him. As I reached the opposite curb, I glanced back and froze in terror. He had stopped dancing and was standing perfectly still, 1 foot in the street, exactly parallel to me. He was facing my direction, but still looking skyward, that horrifying smile plastered on his face. I was completely unnerved. I started walking again, but kept my eyes locked on the man. He didn't move an inch. Once I put about half a block between us, I turned away for a split second to watch where I was going. The street ahead was totally empty. Feeling a hint of relief, I looked back to where he had been standing. My blood ran cold. He was gone. Before I could process what was happening, I spotted him again. Somehow, in those few seconds, he had crossed the street. Now, he was crouched down in the shadows. I couldn't see clearly, but I was certain he was facing me. How had he moved so quickly and silently? I stood there paralyzed with shock, staring at his hunched form. And then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps like a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. But he was moving incredibly fast, closing the distance between us. I'd like to say I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or called for help, but I just stood there frozen in terror as the smiling man crept closer and closer. Then he stopped again, about a car length away. That horrifying grin still stretched across his face as he gazed up at the night sky. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. I was reminded of the Quranic verse, "And among them are those who look at you but do not see." It felt like I was trapped in some twisted nightmare, unable to wake up. When I finally found my voice, I tried to yell, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. But what came out was a pathetic whimper. What the hell? The fear in my own voice only intensified my panic. But the man didn't react at all. He just stood there, smiling, that inhuman smile. After what felt like an eternity, he turned around very slowly and started dance-walking away. Just like that. I watched him go, not daring to turn my back. When he was almost out of sight, I realized with horror that he had stopped moving. The distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back, and this time he was running straight for me. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. I didn't stop until I reached a better-lit road with some traffic. Looking behind me, the man was nowhere to be seen, but I felt his presence lingering, watching me from the shadows. I spent the rest of the walk home, constantly glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see that terrifying smile. But he never reappeared. I lived in that city for 6 more months after that night. I never went for another walk alone again. There was something about his face that will haunt me forever. He didn't look drunk or high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that is truly the most terrifying thing I've ever encountered. To this day, I'm haunted by unanswered questions. Who was that man? What did he want from me? Was he even human? Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing. But then I remember the very real fear I felt that night. It serves as a chilling reminder that there are dark and inexplicable forces in this world beyond our understanding. We must always remain vigilant, even in the places we feel safest. The Farmhouse Stalker by Jennifer Martinez. Back in the mid-80s, my mom worked as a cleaner in Australia. She'd take on jobs in suburban areas and sometimes out in rural spots or wine regions. Her main way of drumming up business was leaving cards at local shops. She also got clients through word of mouth. One day she got this call from a lady who sounded about 60, asking Mum to clean her old farmhouse. The lady had all these weird demands. Normally Mum would meet new clients first, but this woman refused and said she'd just leave the keys under the mat. Mum agreed anyway, because the lady seemed loaded and was offering way more than the usual rate. Monday morning rolls around and Mom heads out to this place. She told me later the long driveway already had her on edge. This house was smack in the middle of nowhere on a massive empty property. She finds the keys and gets to work. About an hour in, she hears the back door slam shut. Mum freezes up because she was told nobody would be there. She's just standing there in the kitchen, paralyzed for what felt like forever, but was probably just a few minutes. No other cars outside. She wanted to bolt, but still had 2 bedrooms left to clean. As time ticked by with no other sounds, Mum started thinking maybe it was nothing. Could have been something falling, not the door. She heads down the hall and into one of the bedrooms. That's when she sees it. The bed is covered in black and white photos. As Mum gets closer, she realizes with horror they're all of her. Some taken at our house, others at places she cleaned. Through windows, over fences. She grabs the house phone to call the cops and books it to the end of the driveway. Seek refuge in the Lord of Daybreak from the evil of that which he has created. The words of my grandmother's favorite Quranic verse echoed in my mind as Mom recounted this chilling tale. It was as if Allah was reminding us to stay vigilant, even in the most unexpected places. The police investigated, but that lady kept insisting it was just a break-in. Eventually, they gave up searching. We packed up and moved to a new town 4 months later. To this day, Mom still gets uneasy cleaning houses alone. That farmhouse stalker changed her forever. Who was taking those photos? What were they planning? Those questions still haunt us years later. The Man Under the Bed by Ashley. This happened about a year and a half ago when I was 22. I'd just moved into my first apartment and was still settling in. The door to my place had this auto-lock feature, so I'd run down to grab mail from the lobby while chatting with a friend on the phone. Back in my room, I'm sitting on the bed going through envelopes still on the call when I drop my phone. It slides under the bed, so I have to get down on the floor to reach for it. That's when I see something that makes my blood run cold. There's someone under my bed. My eyes go wide and I choke back a scream. This person is lying completely still, facing away from me, head tucked down. They can't see me and I can't make out a face. My mind is racing, but I try to stay calm. I grab the phone and say, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm gonna hop in the shower real quick. I'll call you back." The bathroom's right by my bed. I walk in as casually as possible, quietly lock the door and turn on the shower. Then I'm out the window in a flash, dialing 911. They tell me to wait nearby, but go across the street to watch if anyone comes out. It's summer, so still light out. I hide behind some parked cars, eyes glued to my open bathroom window and the building entrance. I call my friend and he shows up right before the cops do. I hand over my keys and they go in. Moments later, 2 officers come out with this scrawny, wild-eyed guy. He's not fighting them, but looks completely unhinged. One cop stays with me while they search the place. He tells me they found the guy standing outside my bathroom door, clutching one of my kitchen knives. He'd snuck in while I was getting mail and hid under the bed. Turns out he was homeless and ended up in a psych ward. And we have already created man, and know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein. This verse from the Quran came to mind as I processed what happened. It was a stark reminder that even in our most private moments, we are never truly alone, for better or worse. The whole thing left me shaken for months. I check under the bed, obsessively installed extra locks. Even now, I'm hyper-aware of my surroundings. You never know who might be lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. It's a terrifying thought that still keeps me up some nights. The Masked Intruder by Michael Thompson. When I was 21, my girlfriend and I were staying at my family's vacation mobile home during a nasty snowstorm. We're cuddled up on the couch by the heater, watching late-night TV. This place is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forest. All that's keeping the outside world at bay is this flimsy wooden door with a busted lock. My grandpa's temporary fix was some cinder blocks as a makeshift barricade since the door swung inward. We're watching TV when my girlfriend starts shaking me, saying she heard something outside. I brush it off as probably just a deer or bear. 5 minutes later, I hear it too. I mute the TV so we can listen better. Sounds like someone's messing around in the little shed where we keep the lawnmower. My car's parked out front, all the lights are on inside. If there is someone out there, they definitely know we're home. My girlfriend's begging me to go check it out, but no way am I stepping foot outside. The noise stops, and now all we hear is the howling wind. After a few tense minutes, I figure it's safe to turn off the inside lights and peek through the blinds. Too dark to see much, so I flip on the porch light. That's when I spot them, footprints in the snow. Not animal tracks, but clear as day shoe prints, heading towards the backyard. I go to open the curtains on the rear window. The second I do, my girlfriend lets out a blood-curdling scream. Even with no lights back there, we can make out a figure dressed all in black, wearing a vendetta mask, staring right at us through the glass. I slam the blinds shut and tell my girlfriend to hide in the bedroom while I grab my grandpa's hunting rifle from the closet. I barricade the front door with everything heavy I can find shut. All the blinds kill the lights and join her huddled in the corner of the bedroom. Bing! Something slams into the front door. He's trying to break in. I don't think he even tried the knob, but it wouldn't have mattered. After a few more thuds, it goes quiet. Seems like he gave up. I stay up all night clutching that gun while my girlfriend sleeps. We're out of there first thing in the morning, but here's the creepy part. Fresh footprints from the front window leading off into the woods. I've never been back, but my grandparents say nothing was stolen or broken into. Still, I'm never setting foot in that place again. Say I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the King of mankind, the God of mankind, from the evil of the retreating whisperer. In that moment of terror, this prayer for protection against unseen evil felt more relevant than ever before. To this day, I wonder who that masked figure was. What did they want? Were they watching us long before we noticed? The idea that someone could be lurking just outside your safe space waiting to strike is a fear that's hard to shake. It's a reminder that danger can find you anywhere, even in the places you least expect. The Neighbor's Secret by David Richardson. Back when my grandma was still alive, I would always walk down the block to her house every day to help with various chores. There was this one day that I walked over to her house the same time I always did and decided to let myself in. I was surprised she left the door unlocked. She was a very paranoid old lady and normally kept everything locked. The moment I stepped inside, an eerie silence enveloped me, sending a chill down my spine. I saw her bedroom door was opened upstairs, and I heard her opening and closing drawers and cabinets. The sounds echoed through the empty house, each creak and thud, amplifying my unease. I walked upstairs calling Grandma, my voice wavering slightly. As I was about 5 feet from the door, she slammed her bedroom door shut. The sudden bang made me jump, my heart racing. I knocked asking if everything was all right, and at that moment my cell phone began to ring. It was my grandma's phone number. Confusion washed over me as I stared at the screen. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone anyway. My grandma was on the other end telling me not to come over that day as she was walking over to her seniors club. I felt my heart skip a beat as she told me this. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Someone else was in the house. I hung up the phone before she could say anything else, remaining silent. My mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. I knew exactly what was going on, but I couldn't let the intruder know I was onto them. I played dumb and said, "Grandma, I'll be downstairs," and made my way to my grandma's kitchen. My hands shook as I grabbed a knife from the drawer, the metal cold against my clammy palm. I dialed 911, my whispered words, urgent and desperate. It remained silent in the bedroom after what happened. The wait for the police felt like an eternity, every creak of the old house making me flinch. When they finally arrived, they burst into the bedroom. The loud and sudden bang of a gunshot caught me off guard. My ears rang as I cowered in the kitchen, praying for it to be over. When the paramedics arrived and wheeled out the intruder, I recognized the man's face. It was my grandma's next-door neighbor. Apparently, he saw that my grandmother had left the house and broke in to look for jewelry. When the police broke into the bedroom, they found the man hiding next to the door with a large knife in hand. If I had walked into that bedroom, I would have been as good as dead. The realization of how close I came to death made me sick to my stomach. As I watched them take him away, I couldn't help but think of the Quranic verse, "And Allah would not punish them while you are among them." It felt like divine intervention had saved me that day. The Closet Stalker by Jennifer Martinez, the most haunting memory of my life. Me and my wife were getting home from dinner out, and as soon as we stepped out of the car, we noticed that our front door to our house was open. The warm evening air suddenly felt cold as dread washed over us. I told my wife to wait outside while I ran inside and ran straight up to her bedroom where I hid the shotgun. My heart pounded in my ears as I loaded the gun. I scanned every single room upstairs, my finger tense on the trigger. There was no sign of anybody, but every shadow seemed to move. I made my way down to scanning the main floor, followed by the basement. There was no sign of anybody, and there was nothing missing or moved. The eerie stillness of the house only heightened my anxiety. Something felt very wrong. I called the cops, and when they arrived I told them what happened, and they began to investigate some rooms upstairs, followed by the basement. Nothing was turned up. They made a case of asking us if we were positive that we shut the door when we left. I myself was starting to have doubts, not completely sure if I had, but my wife remained confident that we had shut the door. The police seemed sure that if somebody had broken in, he didn't stick around long, as there didn't seem to be any signs of burglary. My wife was worried sick, crying that she wasn't comfortable being in the house. I comforted her the best I could, assuring her that whoever broke in the house left in a hurry. But deep down, I shared her unease. I finally fell asleep after hours of rolling around in the bed, but my sleep was immediately cut short by the disturbing scream of my wife. I looked at her and she was staring intently in the direction of the closet, her eyes wide with terror. It hit me like a bullet just then. I had forgotten to check the second closet. I looked over and saw through the briefest second a man poking his head out of the closet in that before closing the closet door. Within 5 seconds, I had the shotgun loaded in hand and cocked it back to let the intruder know that I was armed. The sound echoed in the silent room. I screamed for him to come out, my voice hoarse with fear. Just like that, the closet door opened, but instead of showing submission, he made a mad dash for the front door of the house. I could have shot him, but I didn't have it in me. He was never caught. He got away with it scot-free. I think having that gun saved us from a terrible fate. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the words of the Hadith. None of you should point a weapon at his brother, for he does not know that perhaps Satan may make it go off in his hand, and thus he would fall into a pit of fire. It made me grateful I hadn't pulled the trigger in that moment of panic. Eyes in the Vents by Ryan Foster. About a year ago, while still living under my parents' roof, I started experiencing some weird occurrences in my house, specifically my bedroom. While I was laying awake in my bed one late night, I heard a creaking sound coming from across the bedroom. My closet door had somehow been opened. When I got up to check it, I subconsciously checked for anybody inside my closet, even though I was 26 years old. Of course, there was nobody inside, so I shut the door and went back to bed. But an uneasy feeling lingered in the pit of my stomach. Later that same night, I would hear rumbly, rattling noises coming from up above the ceiling. It sounded like something in the air ducts. It was a very strange sound. I really had no idea what to think about it, but as soon as it stopped, I kind of forgot about it quickly and fell asleep. In the morning, I did tell my dad about sounds in the attic the previous night, but annoyingly, he didn't seem too interested, or he just didn't take me very seriously. His dismissal only made me feel more isolated and afraid. That night, I again lay in my bed awake, reflecting on life, when yet again the slow creak of the closet door, creeping open, broke the silence. This time I felt genuinely afraid. I knew the door was completely shut. It would take somebody twisting the doorknob for it to be able to push open. This time, I took an extra careful look inside the closet for anybody, even though it wasn't a big closet, and there really wasn't any where somebody could hide. I rationalized it as being a broken doorknob or something, and that seemed night I again heard the rattling sounds coming from above the ceiling. It was exactly what happened the previous night. The next morning, I convinced my dad to take a look at my closet door, but he quickly determined that the door was fine. When it was closed, he pulled on it, and it showed no signs of coming off the latch. Of course, he suggested that I was simply leaving the door unlatched, but I knew I wasn't. His disbelief only fueled my growing paranoia. That night, I sat up waiting for it to happen again, and right on cue, the closet door creaks open. I waited for the sounds above the ceiling, but there was just a long silence. I turned on my lamp and looked up to the air vent in my room, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. I could distinctly see 2 wide-open eyes peering through the vents at me. They were unblinking, filled with a malevolent hunger that made my blood run cold. My parents barged into my room, asking if I had gone insane. I explained everything, and they looked at each other like I had completely lost it. Not surprisingly, they dismissed it as a dream, or the fact that I was too tired and machine things. They even began to lecture me about staying up too late, but to this day, I know I hadn't imagined it. It was too real on the closet opening routinely. I know for a fact that wasn't in my imagination. I have never been a believer in the paranormal, but I still have absolutely no other explanation for those 3 nights. The memory of those eyes still haunts me, and I can't help but wonder, what if they're still watching, waiting for their next chance? The words of the Quran echo in my mind, and from the evil of the darkness when it settles. It's a reminder that sometimes the darkness holds terrors we can't explain. The Thing in the Lake by Mark Sullivan. I live in the Poconos with my wife and kids. There's a small lake about a quarter-mile away from our backyard. I commonly take my kids down there to go swimming up until last week, that is. Now I'm never letting them go down there again. I haven't told anyone about this, and fear of sounding crazy, the memory of what I saw still makes my skin crawl. It was last Saturday we went over to the lake and set up our chairs on the sand. It's like a little private beach in our own backyard. It's been amazing. Me and my wife sat in our beach chairs enjoying the sunwall orchids were splashing around in the water. I always tell them not to go too deep. They're still young, 6 and 8. We sat there for a good 2 hours that day. Neither of us were in the mood to get wet. The laughter of the kids and the gentle lapping of the waves created a peaceful atmosphere. Eventually, my wife got tired and decided to walk back home. I agreed to stay with the kids a little while longer, as they were somehow still having so much fun playing in the sand and water. The sun was setting at this point. I was getting tired. They were going a little too deep, so I called at them to come back closer to the shore. They couldn't hear me, apparently, so I stood up and got closer. Before I could call them again, I noticed something in the water. It looked like a black, roundish object, and it was moving closer to my kids. I ran into the water closer to my kids, calling them to come out. When they got close enough, I dragged them out myself. When I turned back to the water, the object was gone. My kids were confused as hell. I didn't know what to tell them, so I just told them it was time to go home. We packed up and walked back to the house, but I wasn't happy when I got home. I was uncomfortable with what I just saw. That thing looks like no sea creature known to man. The image of it moving towards my children played on repeat in my mind. Dinner was waiting for us when we got home. I eat really slow, thinking about the object in the water and whether or not to tell my wife. My wife asked me what's wrong. She noticed that I was eating slow. I decided not to tell her right then. After dinner, I took a flashlight with me and walked back down to the lake. By then, nose was already dark out. I got to the lake, but to be honest, I didn't even know what I was expecting to find. I shined the flashlight all around the surface of the water, searching for the black object. And just then, I heard a large splash come from somewhere in the lake, the kind of splash of something emerging out of the water. I thought it might be some kind of animal in the lake. I shined the light all over the place, searching for the source of the sound, and then I found it, and I realized I was dead wrong. There was a silhouette of a humanoid figure with long black hair covering its whole face. It just stood there facing me, but not staring at me, not that I could tell. I dropped the flashlight in horror and sprinted all the way back up to my house, slamming the door shut behind me. I haven't told anybody about this. What kills me is that leak is only a quarter-mile away from my house, and for all I know, that thing could be watching me through my window right now as I write this. The memory of that figure standing in the lake haunts my dreams. I find myself reciting the Quranic verse, "Say, I seek refuge with the Lord of the daybreak from the evil of what he has created." It's the only thing that brings me comfort in the dark of night, when I imagine that thing lurking just beyond our walls. Will I ever feel safe here again? And more terrifyingly, what if it decides to come closer?